Hello, it's Wednesday, and it's time for relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons. And I will, in fact, be doing some relaxing painting today, sort of relaxing. I'm working on these minifigs. Oh, yeah, I didn't change the text, so it looks the same as it did on Monday. I meant to do that and then got distracted by getting other things ready, like putting some paints away so that I had some room on the work surface here and getting some other paints out for an experimental thing I'm going to be doing a little bit later, probably. Well, these are the Tashir'anun. The I don't know if this should be higher or lower. It should be to the left there, at least at the moment, because X marks the spot. These are a military cult elves that form a military cult called the Tashir'anun, and they have shown up on our Dungeons and Dragons show more than once, and we are not in favor with them. Okay, they don't like our party. They don't like midnight brunch for a variety of reasons. I'm sure that it's all very innocent, but nonetheless, they don't. So I've been painting these because our DM thinks that it would be a great idea for us to have a battle with them, which is, always exciting. I finished painting some Ulstein Grotfeld dwarves. Maybe I'll show those just to prove that I did it. These guys have projectile weapons, probably because of a thing called fervent tech, which is a source of energy in our world. So this guy has some, projectile weapon, and this one is shooting some sort of horrible noxious gas, it looks like, because it's all green and the canister down here is all bubbly and gross. So we'll probably be running into these guys too. We have already several times. And just going to be more of the same. Well, yeah, I'm going to reach over and show this. This came out pretty well, I thought. This is a gigantic minifig. It is to scale, actually. It's a boulette, which is a thing that burrows underground and is considered to be a mindless, horrible, extremely dangerous creature. This one got even more mindless and dangerous because it has been infected by like a fungus. So, you can see it creeping up its side, and then it's got these growths all over the top and open running sores. It's not in great shape, and I'm sure it's kind of angry. So our DM wouldn't have made me do this unless we were actually going to run into it. So you need to watch our Dungeons and Dragons show, because apparently, based on what I have been given to paint here, which is not the Porco Rosso Savoia S21 over the last week or so, but various and sundry adversaries. Yeah. Well, these guys, the melee ones are almost done. I got all the silver embellishment on their armor finished on Monday. Got their weapons painted. Got the leather washed so it looks leathery. I just need to paint the bases, which I'm going to do after all of these are done. The archers need to have their silver filigree embellishment all over their armor. Okay, but otherwise they're done. I got the leather done on the quiver and the wood on the bow, their arrowheads and stuff. So I'll be using a tiny brush and going, oh, no, oh, my brush slipped. Oh, that paint ran. Oh, that's not good. Oh, okay, that looks all right. I'll try to get the rest of them that way. And I'll be wearing my head magnifier the whole time, because it's all really tiny, just barely raised up off the surface detail stuff. Perfect thing to be doing on a Wednesday morning. I also have to tell you that when I said on Monday that I won't be streaming next week, that wasn't entirely true. Okay, my travel days actually, I still have, it's another story. When the weather changes, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah, just whatever. Nose dripping feels like allergies, but I'm not sure what it is. So if I sneeze or sniffle or something, it's because of that. I've also learned to put on a sort of a very warm vest working down here because it's just the basement. Okay, it's a piece of cardboard on a workbench in the basement, and that's what I've been given as my luxurious studio. There is a quarter of an inch of padding on the stool I'm sitting on, so there's that. But what I was, before I wandered off talking about trying to stay warm down here in the basement while I'm doing relaxing painting, is that I will be streaming Monday, but then I'll be gone Wednesday, Friday, and then the Monday following. So I will be missing 3 streams, but not all in 1 week, not all next week. 2 next week and 1 Monday the week after. And I will be returning then on what will be the 18th of December. Okay. So I will be here on Monday the 9th, and then I'll be not streaming for 3 Wednesday, Friday, Mondays. Okay. And then back on the 18th. What else is news? What else is news is that we've got a blizzard coming where we are. And sometimes that turns out to be, a couple of little gusts of wind and a half inch of dusting snow. And sometimes it turns out to be 40-mile-an-hour gusts that last for a day and a half and drops a foot of snow, blowing snow and low temperatures. And we don't know which one it's going to be. Okay, it's going to be something. There will be some wind and snow, but we don't know whether it'll be a little bit of wind and a little bit of snow, or a huge amount of wind and a huge amount of snow, or maybe alternating between those. It's going to be starting today and going through Thursday. And why am I mentioning this? Because you don't see the weather. I'm down in the basement here, right? Doesn't matter. It might matter if the internet goes out, which does happen here periodically. What's weird is that it usually happens like on a Sunday late morning when there's a sunny sky and no wind. And then the internet decides that it just needs to take some time off, I guess. I don't know, it has to rest its intelligence. But there is a slight chance that, if you check in on Friday and there's no stream going on, it's because the internet went out. And that would be the reason why. I hope that doesn't happen. Odds are it won't happen, but if it does, if I'm not here on Friday, that's why, because I'm planning to be out here on Friday, and will be maybe, depending on if I ever get around to working today, I might actually be going back to the Savoia. And the thing that has to be done there is painting the instrument panel, and that will be challenging. Yeah, I think that's it. I've only used up, not even 10 minutes. Good grief. I'm getting really bad at this. I used to be able to sit down and talk about something for almost a half hour before I even start. But recently, meaning, I don't know, like the last month or so, I'm getting maybe 10 or 15 minutes in. Okay, I think I was using this brush. I hadn't used this much before. It's new to me. It's got a really fine point on it, but kind of long bristles. So if I keep the paint right on the tip of it, it allows me to reach into some places that I couldn't get otherwise with this brush. which is worn out, which needs to be replaced, which every stream for the last 2 months I have said I need to replace it. And then, I'm cleaning up and turning things off and whatever and forget to do that. This paint. This is the paint I'll be using for the embellishment, the silver embellishment on the archers. I guess that's it. I guess I better get going and start doing stuff. I'm just mixing the paint, making sure that it's stirred up well. This is paint that was designed for airbrushing airplanes, a whole set of metallics, and it's really pretty good paint, but it's, for airbrushing, it's very thin, so it tends sometimes to run off of where I'm trying to put it onto a place where I don't want it. And then I do touching up. So that's become a part of this. To take these off, I will be putting on my head magnifier. The head will suddenly become huge as I put these on. They have a supplemental light, which is very nice, and it makes everything twice the size that it is otherwise. It lets me see just what I've gotten myself into here. There is a good deal of decoration on these. Okay, I'll start putting paint on, and hopefully it'll be okay. I'm using a paper towel when I open these. These sometimes spatter when they open or close. Yeah, see, it did. There's the spatter there. Better there than on me. Okay. So a holder. Put another one on a holder. Keep the holders separated from each other, as I've mentioned many times already. There's magnets on the bottom, and when they come close to each other, they repel each other, and sometimes that means that the thing on them goes flying, and it goes flying and breaks. Okay, well, I started out by the very first brush stroke, getting paint where I didn't. An inauspicious start. Painting this is going to take forever, because it's tiny little bits that I have to put on very slowly and carefully, and then the paint dries on the tip of the brush and I have to wash it off. And anyway, this is going to be, you're just going to see me. I don't know if you can even see what's going on. Maybe you can. You're going to see a brush just moving like little bits of brush moving. That's me putting silver paint on tiny little raised lines. And occasionally adjusting I'm looking at this or holding it so that so far this isn't going all that well. It's just a question of getting the paint onto the brush and getting the brush working. So far, I've got some splotches that I need to touch up, and the paint isn't flowing really well. Who knows how this is going to go? It's so weird. I didn't have this problem on Monday. I might have to try a different brush. This just isn't working today. I'm not quite sure. I don't understand what the problem is, really. Maybe the bristles are like a little stiff or something. Just give it a cleaning here. I mean, it didn't turn out awful, but paint was kind of not going where I wanted it and going where I didn't. It's been that kind of thing so far this morning. Abandon this. It's just not working for me today. Use this and see how it goes. You have to stir it periodically because the little metal bits sink out of suspension. Guess that's better, hopefully. Yeah, so when you see these on the show, they're going to be on camera, probably, further away than they are when I'm painting it. The reality is that most of the stuff that I'm doing here probably isn't going to be visible. And so this is probably a lot of working in vain. Taking forever because None of these brushes seem to be working. Now, this is where we should have the music back. I'm just going silent here while I'm trying to get this to work. Is the paint or the brush? Me? But at this pace, you'll never see this done. The conditions have not changed since Monday. Okay, I don't know why. This is more difficult than it was then. Yeah, I'm doing the edges of the knee pads here. That has some sort of name as an armor piece, but I don't know what it is. So I'm calling it the knee pad because it just looks like a knee pad. I have to think of something to talk about while I'm doing this. I was ranting about the Mickey Mouse Club for weeks. I'll just do a reprise of that. The reason I was ranting about the Mickey Mouse Club is that although I haven't, and I'm not sure I will be able to, look at some old episodes to see what really happened. But I'm not sure that the Mouseketeers really ever did anything. They introduced themselves. They popped up on camera one after the other. I remember they kind of came up and then leaned over and went off camera. It was that kind of thing. And they called out their name. That was pretty easy for them to do because their name was on their shirt. I guess, for little kids, it was like a reading exercise. Okay, what I mean by that is because the name was on their shirt and then they called it out. You could learn to read by matching, pairing up the name they called out with the letters on their shirt. Guess that made it an educational program, kind of, in a way. Anyway, they did that at the beginning of the show. All of them. There were a lot of them, I remember. So that took up a good deal of time as they were yelling out their names. And then Jimmy, who was the adult who kind of ran the club, got them started on whatever day it was, like guest star day or talent roundup day or music day. And then there was like an introduction to usually somebody else on the show who would be the rounded up talent or the guest star. And then maybe one or two of the Musketeers would get involved in the introduction. And then the non-Musketeer would perform something. Then the Musketeers would come out and congratulate them. Maybe give them some weird ears. They were white, sparkly, sequined ears. They weren't even official ears. And then there'd be a cartoon. And then frequently there would be like a short, like Spin and Marty or the Hardy Boys or something that didn't involve the Musketeers. So you'd go, what do the Musketeers do? They say their names and they enthusiastically applaud whoever came on their show, to do stuff so they didn't have to. Every once in a while, I think, like one of the Musketeers had a talent they wanted to show off. But if I recall, they mostly just didn't do anything. Most of the show was not them. It's a pretty sweet gig, I think, really. I think one of the Musketeers might have been one of the characters in the Hardy Boys. But then they weren't being a Musketeer when they were doing that. They were being Hardy. That was a kind of a repeat of my Mickey Mouse rant. Because I don't have anything to talk about anymore. I'm going to have to search for inspiration for discussions. I've talked about vacuum tubes and television antennas, cars that required constant maintenance, all sorts of parts replacements. I talked about World War II airplanes. I talked about the F-100s, the 100 series of fighters and fighter bombers. I guess I could talk about airplanes a little bit more. So I was talking about the 100 series, the F-100 and the 101 in the 102, in the 104. I don't know what happened to the 103. 105, 106. And then there were some experimental ones, I think, the 7s, 8s, 9s. Then the 111, which was also called the TFX to make it sound like Texas. This was a big deal then, I think, with Johnson and stuff. And then the F-117. So there were a lot of them missing along there. I'm not sure. I'd have to look up. I'm pretty sure there was a 107. There's some sort of experimental plane. And they were all quite different from each other. And then the numerology changed and the F4 came on. I don't know why they abandoned the 100 series, but well, probably I know why. Yeah, I mentioned this before. Some of those numbers were Navy planes, and I wasn't really into Navy planes very much. I didn't keep up with them. I kept up with Air Force planes because my family, my uncle and father, had been Air Force people. My uncle was like in the active duty for, what is it, 20 years or something? Some huge amount of time. He retired as a full colonel. There's two kinds of colonels in the Army and the Air Force. They had similar insignia. One kind is like just a step up from being a major, and it has the same sort of little leaf insignia that a major has, but it's a different color. And then I think that's lieutenant colonel. And then when you get to be a colonel, just without any lieutenant attached to it or anything, but just a colonel that isn't lieutenant, then get an eagle. That's a pretty cool insignia, the eagle one. So in the military, because you got an eagle, there were different words for it. Some people called it the bird colonel because you got your bird. I remember this when my uncle called to tell my brother that he got to be colonel, not lieutenant colonel, but colonel. That being a chicken colonel. Not like in bark, 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 but because it was a bird. That was funny, I guess. There's a totally non sequitur anecdote. When I was talking, that came up because I was talking about why I wasn't familiar with planes in the Navy. There were some pretty good. I mean, they were built for carriers, so there's some pretty good ones, and also some kind of weird ones. But I do believe that's probably why the Phantom was an F4, because it was I remember correctly, it was actually designed to be a Navy plane. And they used their naming convention. Kind of my recollection of it anyway. So, yeah, so then there was the F4. And then the numbers got small like that again. There was an F5 and a 7 and an 8 and these kinds of things. So I used to go to the library. And they had the Janes there. Janes put out books of descriptions of planes and ships. And it was international, so it had not just, not just the US planes, but it had the Soviets as well. And I remember I found it interesting, paying attention to Soviet planes. Most of them were MiGs, which was short for Migushian or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. Sorry, I don't remember the Russian words. They were all odd numbered. Like 13, 15, 17, that kind of thing. This part of the armor is really ill-defined. So I'm trying to catch like the edges of it and maybe a little bit on the inside. It'll just be what it'll be. There'll be like silver markings. Too much. I'll have to come back with the green and touch up some of these spots. But the Janes, had silhouette view and a top-down view. So you got to see roughly what the planes looked like. And then they also described range and top speed. Sometimes how much armament they could carry. They would sometimes do that. So I spend a lot of time, comparing and contrasting the U.S. planes with the Soviets. Well, it isn't coming out extremely well, but it's not awful. Like 17 flies faster, but has a shorter range than whatever our comparison was. What was kind of interesting about it, well, I don't know if you find it interesting or not. I found was that NATO, but MiG-17, whatever, they didn't just call it that. They had to assign it a name. So all the Soviet planes had NATO assigned names. And I mean, it wasn't very clever. Bombers all started with a B. So there was a bear and a bison, that kind of thing. Fighters all started with an F. So there was like a fox bat and I remember that. Yes, there's a raised edge around the face on the helmet. The melee guys, I painted that, so I'm doing that on here too. Oh, hi. Thanks for joining in. Do I do any other wargaming? Not anymore. I used to. It's another used to. There were these, geez, it's so long ago now since I've had a chance to play those sorts of things. They were Avalon Hill games. This is probably older than you are. I don't know how old you are, but they were tabletop board games played on a hex grid with millions of little pieces. Okay, I mean, like every patrol, every plane or whatever was a little cardboard piece, each of which had different rules about how far it could go and what its range was and everything. There was different terrain on the map. I used to play those with my brother, and I didn't know. The wasn't about my brother. The was about how I just put a splotch of paint. It's just splotch. I just splotched. The technical term for what I'm doing is when I miss a spot, it's splotching. And then I get ragged lines. I used to play those. I think, what was one we played a lot? Panzer Blitz. I'm pretty sure that's what it was called. It was actually one of the smaller games in terms of the map size and how many pieces it had. But it allowed us to reproduce a lot of World War II tank battles like Kursk and that sort of thing. But I have to say that I haven't done a lot of game playing at all recently. I remember those games though, just we would open the box, and spend, it felt like just the entire day doing nothing but setting it up and reading the rules. Okay, well, that's what the Archer looks like. I did my best in terms of applying the silver paint. I've got some touching up that has to be done on the gray and the green. Seems to be going a little better. I think the paint is in the brush better right now. A little bit more controlled. I don't know. Maybe not. As I said that, it stopped working. But currently, no, I don't do any other wargaming. Closest I get to it is our Dungeons and Dragons show, which is about to have more combat in it. because these minifigs I'm working on are going to become adversaries in the show. So painting the minifigs, gives me a heads up about who we're going to run into. None of it being very surprising because we have made enemies of these guys for some reason. Trying to thwart their evil plans. They're doing something that's really dangerous and evil, but we don't really quite know exactly what it is yet. And they're in partnership with some other people who seem to be not like us anymore. And so by the DM giving me these minifigs and saying paint them, it's not really giving too much away in the show because it was inevitable that we would have another battle with them. And so we are. But other than knowing that some of them are melee and some of them are ranged, I might like that. If I could find somebody to play anything anymore. Most of the people I'm close with are involved in our D&D show. I did play Warhammer, Warhammer. When it first came out, they had these big sets that had elves, orcs, and lizardmen. And we splurged and bought one of those. And one of the kids did the elves, one did the lizardmen, and I did the orcs and goblins. We spent a lot of time painting the minifigs. It turned out that's what it was, pretty much, was just painting minifigs. But we did play that. I actually built a custom playfield. It had some changes in elevation. It had a stream that ran through it with a ford, a shallow spot. Got to play that a couple of times. Fighting against the elves. I had a dragon on my side, but my die throws were pretty bad. And my rock clobber the accuracy really sucked compared to the ballistas that the elves had. Anyway, it was really close. It was like we basically annihilated each other every time we played. Pretty much just did each other in. So that was good. That means that we were at least evenly matched during the setup. Got it. Okay. Yeah, I remember, Warhammer 40K came out as we were playing the original fantasy one. Never got into that. I'm really, probably we never got into it because we just invested a whole bunch of money and time in the original fantasy one. Ended up buying some of the, extra stuff too, like what I had squigs, they were called. These weird little orange things. And then some of the boss figures, we did that. Well, hardcore, yeah. To say I kind of like the Warhammer. The Warhammer was much easier to play than the Avalon Hill games. Not, it wasn't a realistic recreation of historic battles like the Avalon Hill was, but it was actually possible to set it up and play it in a day, unlike taking the entire weekend to do a setup and then not having hardly any time to actually play like it was with the Avalon Hill War games. There's the real downside to those. It's just the amount of time in preparation. Need to look at this and see, try to get them to match a little bit in terms of, what got silvered and what didn't. But I remember the Warhammer was pretty fun. There was enough complexity to it, so it wasn't just, stick some figures out there and move around a little bit. There was some strategy involved in terms of, placement of the figures and the movement and things like that. Without making it so complicated, you couldn't play with your children. That was the point, was to do a family game. I don't know anybody currently who's actively playing any of those games. We've got our Dice and Dungeons show. It's all Dungeons and Dragons, and occasionally we play a one shot now and then, an extended one where we bring more people in. They just create a set of characters. We come in and we're all like level 5 or 6 characters and do a one shot that somebody has created. Now, that's been kind of fun. But I'm not sure anybody is or would be much into wargaming. Be kind of interesting and fun to do that, though. Try to remember how to play some of these games. Well, it's a good thing these things are going to be on camera at a distance, because without the head magnifiers, they're looking okay, but with them, I would say they're kind of mediocre in terms of quality. Just kind of knew that these archers were going to be more difficult than the melee to do the silver highlighting. some of the angles, the way they're standing. The armor are showing and parts aren't. But it's coming out okay. Certainly, it's adequate. This is going to be adequate for the show. Oh, and I'm on camera. Flames of War. So yes, is what you're saying, that I know that some game stores will not so much sponsor, I guess, but they become a place where those games are played. So they become a gathering spot. I guess what you're saying is that some game stores have the tables set up and provide a facility for people to come and play that game. Flames of War. I have to say I'm not familiar with it. Is that a game that's like a tabletop game played with tokens and things, or is it like Warhammer in that it's that there's a lot of minifigures with it that people spend time painting? I really don't know the game at all. If you watch the stream, you find out that I am ignorant about almost everything that isn't old. The 100 series of Air Force fighters, but and then be ignorant of a wildly popular game. Ah, okay. So, North Africa campaign, the Desert Rats. You recreate some of the North African battles of World War II. Mhm. Going to just make a statement here that most people, even if they know World War II or think they do, are not really very familiar with all the battles that went down in North Africa. And some of those were really massive, some gigantic tank battles, Tobruk, rapid movements across the desert. Sometimes effective use of air power. So in your game, I'm certain you have armored vehicles, because that was a significant part of the battles in North Africa. Not just tanks, but other armored personnel carriers, things like that. As well as ground troops. So in this game, Um, I imagine you have separate figures for the armored vehicles. Do you include? Does the game include the air power as well? Fighter bombers and fighters. I suppose you have. How realistic does it get? I mean, you get okay. Yeah, I was wondering about the detail as you're playing the game. And you start getting into things like supply lines, logistics of moving things from one place to the other. I'm almost certainly you have to deal with all sorts of terrain effects and things of that sort. So during a turn, yeah, you have to decide where to aim your weapons and which ones to fire where. It sounds pretty intense, really. Ah, okay. So you kind of pick up. Sorry, I just made a big blob on both sides, on the green and the gray. Every once in a while that happens. The brush just doesn't go where I want it. And then the paint goes everywhere, and it just did. It's not big spots, and it won't be extremely hard to touch it up, but it means getting the gray out, and it means getting the green out, and it means touching it up and trying not to overdo it. Kind of inevitable that was going to happen at least once. So I was wondering, if it not just the infantry and the armor, but if it included air as well. Trying to recover from that oops, and of course the oops happened right up in a spot that would be pretty visible. Yeah. I hope our shows, the members in our shows, appreciate the work that is going into painting these tiny little silver lines all over these guys. This boot did a little bit, got it up on the gray. Just one more to go after this. This one's almost done, at least pre-touch up. These are starting to lose focus. I'm going to have to do a little stretch after this before I start the last one. It does, it came out okay. It's not great, but it's okay. So 2 down, 1 to go, and then get the gray paint out and the green paint out and touch up a bunch of stuff. But I'm going to take these off and have a drink of coffee and a little bit of a stretch. When you're playing this, excuse me. When you're playing Flames of War, okay, so you talk about you have different models of tanks and different weapons arrays, and they did. Like one kind of tank might have 4 or 5 or more variations, even in terms of the weapons it carries and how much ammunition and things of that sort. Do you reference the things that were actually available in the historic battles, or do you just try to like balance forces? So if you're doing it like in the actual battles, I'm guessing that that's quite an investment that you need to make in your miniatures to make sure that you've got the correct models and equipment. That's a good commitment. Yeah, what I was saying though, before we started talking about that, was I got Jane's fighting planes, and this was in the probably early '60s, right? And so the NATO names isn't just like this wasn't just a MiG-21. It was, and I do not remember what they were, but the fighters all had an F name and the bombers all had a B name. But I was always, paying attention to whether James thought our planes were better than their planes. And of course, we had to believe that our planes were better, higher, faster, more powerful. It wasn't always the case, though. Some of the Soviet, they had a different, up until, later in the 60s. Whoa, I just really messed that up. We tended to make planes that were heavier and less maneuverable. That actually was the case all the way back to World War II. Is that both the Japanese and the Germans had planes that were more agile and sometimes faster. I'm not quite sure why that was in terms of our design thinking. That, and thinking back at it, that was kind of the way it was, especially the beginning of World War II. And then right on through the whole Cold War. Planes all tended to be heavier and somewhat less maneuverable. Just a different philosophy, I guess, of what planes should do and how they should operate. Anyway, the same thing was true through most of the Cold War. That the Soviet planes tended to be lighter and more maneuverable, and sometimes a little faster. Not always, but sometimes. Yeah, good thing this is the last one. I'm starting to get really messy here. I'm going to have tiny little spots of green and gray. I'll be spending a fair amount of time going back over these models with green and gray, trying to clean up the lines that I'm leaving here, the messy lines that I'm creating with this silver paint, and it's getting worse. Cow. There's an explanation I'm sure nobody's heard in a million years. But look, just big blots of just. I'm going to make that noise. I'm going to make the frustrated noise. Well, what I'm going to be doing the rest of the stream, assuming I survive this here. Get this more or less adequately painted is not going to require such detail. Almost every brush stroke is making a mess right now. Almost every single one. That is not an encouraging thing. I'm running silent here as I'm trying to refocus, I guess, and stop making a mess. Apologize for not looking up. Oh, hi, Enforcer. Thanks for dropping in. No, I haven't. I'm not familiar with that. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about that? And a little bit about how you've learned about it and whether you're going to be playing it or not. I'm having I was doing okay, but I'm having there was just an episode of messiness with the paints here. Kind of just as you were coming on. Good thing I'm not working on the Savoia today. The instrument panel, it would be an epic fail, as we say, when you roll in that one. I would be rolling that ones on my attempts to paint the instrument panel. I don't understand this. There's another blot. I seem to have lost all ability to paint at the moment. Really? Okay. I'll have to look it up. I'm not familiar with it at all. It would make sense that it would be almost that old, that if one game came out, there would be competitors. When I started playing D&D, it was pretty much when it first came out back in the mid-70s. I think I've mentioned this many times before, I got involved actually in a public access cable telecast of a D&D game. I didn't play it. I worked the cameras. Well, one of the cameras. I couldn't do more than one at a time, right? I handled one of the cameras on the show, and sometimes played it outside of the show, and then didn't play it again forever. Till one of my kids got into it, and had to relearn the whole thing. I'm not familiar with that. Ah, okay. There was a lot of post-apocalyptic stuff then. Probably because, we were still worried about blowing up the world with our nuclear weapons. And so it didn't seem terribly fantastic at all that there would be a post-apocalyptic world, because it didn't seem fantastic that there could be a nuclear apocalypse. That was an interesting time. And so the rifts let yeah, great choice. Be an adventurer, because he probably won't be dead as quickly. Oh my. I needed stronger words than that right then. It was one of those classic bringing the brush up to the work surface and missing the target. Yep. Very, very classic oops. It was weird. I was having more luck getting these tiny little lines. No, I spoke too soon. I'm having no luck getting any paint anywhere where I want it at all. I can survive this boot, then I can move on to repair work. I mean, that is if I can get this boot done, and I can't without making a mess because I just did. Almost. It almost wasn't terrible. And then it was. Going to be, you're not going to be seeing this getting finished real rapidly because there's just kept getting messier and messier as I was going along here. It probably doesn't look too bad at the distance you're seeing it, but yeah, it's pretty messy. We'll look up in just a minute and see Enforcer's post. Okay. So this is a game in which your character will die. I guess that, that's one way to end the game. Because, with D&D, depending on your DM, unless you have just this game is just about this specific quest and that's all it is, unless you do one of those, the game can just be infinite. But if you've got a game in which your life expectancy is low, then that changes the character of it quite a bit. Okay, well, looking at it through the head magnifiers, I can safely say that my painting just got worse and worse and worse as it went along here, and that I've got a fairly large amount of touch up to do. It seems almost like there's a lot of stuff going on in the game. That could be, some people might find that really challenging. Oh yeah, I understand that. Our dogs will do that sometimes too. And then it's filtered out by the microphone here, but occasionally they'll just really get going. Thanks for dropping in, though, and talking about that game. Well, the silver on the first two should be dry by now, so I can start. Well, if I get a color out, I want to do all three. I'm going to start with the gray. Okay, that was quick. I'm going to start with the gray. There isn't a lot of gray touch up, and this paint is almost gone, but going on time, 11:30. Okay, I've used up about half of it. I have to take a really quick break. Our dogs just started going. You can't hear it, but something's going on upstairs. Fortunately, there's somebody watching them, so I don't have to worry about it unless I hear another kind of sound. As I have said, occasionally I will need to take a quick break, and I will need to do that. I'm not even going to put the break sign on. I should be back in just a couple of minutes. Okay, now I am unbroken. You have two dogs? Okay, this gray is almost completely gone, which makes using it a little bit difficult. But it's the color that's used on the cloth part of the armor. There's some spots that need to be touched up with the gray, and I'm going to get all three of them done with this color, and then most of the touch-up needs to be done with the green paint. To get a glob. I'm using technical terms like blobs and globs and stuff. The paint is on the brush, but not where I want it. Touching up spots you probably can't even see, but I can, and I don't like it, so I'm trying to fix just some places where the silver got onto the gray in a way that makes the line look jagged. Mm. Thanks for dropping in. See you on Friday. Just it's getting time to just toss this paint. I need to decide. I need to find out if I got more of it somewhere. The kind of color that I should have a lot of. So I'm doing this. I not only need to replace this brush, but I need to get those little ball bearing things, the mixing balls. I got some newer paints and it really should have mixing balls in them. And I don't because, didn't have them. And I hope I'm getting most of the spots that need to be touched up. At least the ones I'm seeing as I rotate this. Okay, well, that's that. Give him one more go over. I seem to remember having messed up at the top of the boots on, yeah, there it is. Top of the boots on one of these. When the paint is wet, it glistens. It's shiny. So it's sort of hard to tell the difference between that and the silver. Okay. Now I have a lot of green touch up to do. The green paint is finicky. This brush is a mess. It's sort of gel-like. I don't know. There are some paints that are just like that. They are more viscous than others, and this green is like that. It turned out pretty well. I mean, it because of that, it was almost like a speed paint in that the pigment tended to sink into the low spots, and it gave a nice appearance. And it's a little bit glossy, which is kind of what we wanted here, since I didn't have any of the dark gloss green anymore. It actually works better than the dark gloss green that I originally used on Tashir'anun ages ago, because that's so dark that on camera it almost looks black. But this is just, I don't know, it's not the easiest color to work with. And I'm giving it a major shaking and vibration here on the paint stirrer thing. I'm hoping that works. Okay. There it is. That's green. You can't see it because it's off camera, right? Right. There's green. Well, I might as well take one of these that's on a stand, right? And start putting little dots of green paint on it. It's going to be going all around the model, rotating it, trying to find the spots that are really not good. Paint it with the green. It's just a lot of messiness on, going on. Hopefully the touching up won't be messy. It's a little bit easier. I'm painting from a lower surface up to a raised surface. And so for me, at least, it's a little easier to control the location of the paint. And if the brush behaves and the paint behaves, it should work out okay. What was I saying? I was talking about the Soviet planes and how, well, I really messed up the back of this helmet. NATO gave them gay names, like F names for fighters and B names. We had a bear and a bison. We had a fox bat. I can't remember them all. There were a lot of fighter names, but for some reason I can't recall. Oh, good thing I turned it this way. There's a big splot of silver paint right there. This must have been the last one I did, because the amount of touching up there's a lot of it. What I find kind of interesting is that, there was a lot of aircraft development during World War II in terms of military planes. And then again during the Cold War, as everybody got prepared to blast each other into oblivion. And so during the 1960s, before intercontinental ballistic missiles really became the way to deliver nuclear Armageddon, it was the development of bombers. And both the U.S. and the Soviet Union still have kept in service some of the bombers that were developed way back in the 60s. Like, we still fly B-52s. And I think I read somewhere that the very last B-52 was built in 1964. Counted down. Right? That was, 60? Yeah, not even 50. It was 60 years ago. Granted, the planes that are flying now have been rebuilt inside out, engines, airframes, repairs, upgrades, and everything multiple times since then. But it is, for all purposes, a 60-year-old airplane. And the Russians are doing the same. They still have their propeller-driven bombers. I forget. I think those were the Bisons, the propeller-driven ones. I can't recall if that was the Bison or the Bear. They still fly them pretty routinely as they probe air defenses, like especially in Alaska, with that. And that's sort of the case with other military aircraft. I mean, sometimes it seems like something lasts, well, like during the World War II, there was development constantly, and planes didn't stay in service that long. And during the Cold War, a lot of the jet fighters, like the 100 series I'd been blirbling about, they would come and go pretty quickly. But then, I don't know, maybe it was that there wasn't anything more to do technically to make them much better. Maybe it was because they're really expensive. But the military planes now tend to stay in service. I mean, to say for decades is not an exaggeration. And there might be upgrades of engines or avionics or other things, but they're still sometimes very old planes. I remember being at an air show once, probably like 10 years ago now. It was quite a while ago. And there was a tanker, a KC-137 or something. The kind of plane that's used for refueling other planes in the air. And that was based on the civilian Boeing 707. There are no 707s flying anymore, and there haven't been for decades and decades, but it was parked next to a Lockheed Constellation, affectionately known as the Connie. It was a propeller-driven plane that had the signature appearance of it is that it had three tails, three vertical tail surfaces. And the Connie was being restored. It was barely airworthy. Okay, just scarcely airworthy at all. It was undergoing a significant historical restoration because it was a historical plane. And it was parked next to this tanker. The Air Force officer who was part of the crew of the tanker, I don't know, with pride, I'm not sure quite what the affect was associated with it, but he pointed out that the tanker that was still in active service had actually been built before the Connie. So the Connie is sitting there undergoing historic renovation, and the older plane, the tanker, was actually still in service. So sometimes we talk about, how wasteful the military is, but they keep old things going, for better or worse. I mean, the Boeing 707 is so old that the original one, what was it called, the Dash 80 or something, it wasn't even a 707 then, is in the Smithsonian, in the Air and Space Museum. It is kind of odd, I have to say, being old enough now, that some of the planes that I not only grew up with, but came in later, when I was older. Oh my. Okay, there's a spot of one of the gray bits. I have to remember that. Right up in front here, it's a really bad splotch that I need to fix with the gray paint that I missed when I was doing the gray paint fix-up. right there. Yeah, I mean, it's not so. It's not just planes I grew up with, but the planes that came in later, like the Concorde. That's another one of those things. You know, it's like landing on the moon or supersonic transatlantic flight. You know, we used to do that, and then we don't anymore, and almost can't. So for all the progress we've made, maybe with computers and social media and everything else, other things we look at historically, and it's like, oh wow, there was our culture actually flew supersonic jets across the Atlantic as twice the speed of sound. It wasn't just supersonic; it was cruising at 2 times the speed of sound all the way across the Atlantic Ocean. And that was just done several times a week. How did that happen? I am looking at silver paint on the top of the arrow and being baffled at how that even occurred. Somehow recall that there was more green touching up to do than I am doing. So hopefully I'm getting things that absolutely need to be done. All right, I've got a gray touch up and a black touch up on this one. Once this is done, paint on the bottom. There we go. Yeah, wow, that was probably the biggest blotch or splotch or blot. Those words are interchangeable. Well, maybe not. Maybe like a splotch is smaller than a blot or something. I should write up a dictionary of oops terms. You know, is that a splotch or a blotch or a blurb or a blot? Could be any of those things. What black did I use? One black is flat, one black is glossy. I used one of them. Just going to do one of these where I'm going to try to get a little bit of paint off the tip of the paint jar rather than bothering to squeeze any out, because I don't know if you can see it, but there's this little spot up here where I managed to get silver paint on what is a broken arrow. Green spot there. Now, this is getting to the stage where it's adequate. Okay, I have to say that. I'll look around it one more time, see if I missed anything big, and if not, I will declare it adequate. And then prepare to paint bases. There, I have now declared it adequate. So painting the bases involves two different brushes. One is to go around the feet, and the other is to spread the paint around the rest of the base once that's done. I'm going to take these off for the moment. I'll try to paint these without the head magnifiers. I've got 6 of them here, and this brush is not necessary for that. I will be using a different detail brush to paint around the feet. What I'm doing here is doing some isopropyl alcohol just to get the paint that has built up around the base of the bristles. Just had an idea. I keep forgetting that I need to replace this brush because I use it, and then after the stream is over, I have to do some cleaning up and turning things off, and that kind of thing, and I forget about the brush. I'm going to put this on my glasses because it's unlikely that I'll forget those, or at least I'll remember them sooner than later. And then there, it's on my glasses. So when I pick up my glasses, the brush will be there, and I'll go, why did I put the brush there? And then I'll remember. Thanks for the follow. I appreciate it, and thanks for joining in. Bebop, okay. Who was it? Somebody Bebop. That was an old anime that I used to watch with my daughter ages ago. Cowboy Bebop, was it? Might have been. I think we use this color called dark sand for the bases. Knocking things over. It's this color. So I have to find this color. I think it's dark sand. No, that's a strap on the boot. Okay, let me see if I can find it here. I'm looking for paint. That's why I'm not on screen right now. There's a color I want. Cork brown, that's a good color. Yeah, it's in here somewhere, I'm pretty sure. Or is it one of these? Okay, sorry. I'm muttering to myself because I am not remembering. Dark sand. Okay, I'm looking at my color chart here. That's the color. I just need to find it. How can I not find it? Why am I not finding it? Is it gone? Desert yellow. These are, I'm reaching over to colors that I'm using for the Savoya. S21 Porco Rosso's plane that I've been working on. Anyway, there's browns here. Brown. I'm just going to I'm muttering to myself as I look at the paints and say, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. That's not it. That's it. It's lighter. in the bottle than I remembered. To decide. I guess I'm going to use this brush around the feet. I need to come out, like about at least 1/8 of an inch before I can then move on to like a bigger brush, bigger being more bristled like this to spread the rest of the paint around. You ask, why has this yellow flame been sitting here the entire time? There is an answer to that I will reveal the answer now. The answer is that, okay, I'll just show it to you. Okay. We make our own dungeon tiles, and I've shown examples of these before. So I'll pull some out. I'm not going to do all of them, but I'm going to do these. Yeah, so we make our own dungeon tiles for the show, and they look really good on screen. They're pretty fun to work with, too. I'll just show how they work. These are printed on the PLA printers back there. Go up a little bit. And they've been customized heavily so that the wall and the base are just one print. So, they don't come apart. They're always vertical. They line up really nicely. So we print them and prime them and base coat them and detail them and then eventually wash them. And this one hasn't been washed, but this is an example of how this works. And then underneath here are ball magnets in the corners so that this is amazing at how easy it is to take them apart and how well they hold with each other. And so it's possible to, make rearrangements really easy. Okay. So you say, well, what about this yellow flame thing? Well, we also have specialty tiles that we've used in our show and continue to make. Like this here is a fire mage. It's just, it's a wall and a cauldron. The actual fire mage layer is quite a lot larger than this. Okay. So this has a couple of features to it. One is that it has a sigil, fire sigil, printed right onto the wall. So when I painted this one, I painted the black and the copper and the red, and then I think it's brass on the outside. So the sigil comes out looking really good, right? And then this has a cauldron, and the cauldron is actually part of the print of this tile. But the way this works is that the fire mage goes flame on, and ta-da, there's a flame. Okay. And then it's a really nice feature for the show, but it's also a lot of fun for the role play. There's another tile I'll show you in a minute. Anyway, we would like to have more of these, but they take a long time to hand paint. Okay. There's 3 different colors, and it just, you can see how the colors were applied one over the other. And they just take a long time to paint, and especially since the yellow doesn't cover that well, it takes 2 coats, and then the orange and then the red. So what we're looking at is we got some yellow primer, is essentially what it is, and just spray painted this, and I'm going to see if I can just use one color. No, the flame is smaller than the other one. If I can just use one color and get a decent flame effect without having to do these multiple coats, because it takes like 20 minutes or something to paint one of these, and that's just way too long. And then, they're to be used, and this is a cool tile. It looks just like a regular tile, right? You're just walking down the hallway going, da-da-da-da-da, nothing to see here, but it, if you're not careful, you trigger the trap, and all it does is that spins around, and there's a magnet in the base of the flame and a magnet in the panel here. Let's see how that works. Even not just on screen during the show, when the viewer, when you're watching it online, would see that this looks just like a normal tunnel, but the players, depending on the orientation, if it was facing the players this way, wouldn't see that that's a trap until it is a trap. Hold the magnet out of the cauldron. There we go. And then, and there's a ball here. It like this. You can see that that's a pretty decent trap. And it has a really good visual effect as well. That's one of our really cool special dungeon tiles. Anyway, that's why this flame is here, is because we are looking for, to be blunt, shortcuts in trying to make something that looks nice, but doesn't take a long time to prepare, so that we can make a lot of them instead of just one or two of them. And if there's time left in the stream, and there should be a little bit, I'm going to experiment with some dark orange paint and touch up the tips of the flames to see how it looks. But first, the dark sand base. And while I'm stirring the paint, I'm getting it mixed up here so that it, paints. I'm just going to remind everybody that I will be not streaming Wednesday and Friday next week and the Monday following that. Okay, I will be streaming this Friday and next Monday, but then I'll be gone for 3 stream days, Wednesday, Friday, and Monday, just because I need to be away. And then I'll be back streaming again on the 18th. So don't think that I'm disappearing, but as I have talked about it earlier, many months ago, because of the holidays and just stuff. There's just stuff that happens. I'll be missing some streams. And then check social media, I think, because the streaming dates for our Dungeons and Dragons show is also affected somewhat by the holidays. I'm right now kind of going, just day by day kind of things. It's what do I have to do today? Do I have to avoid the blizzard? Do I have to go to an appointment? So I have to admit, I have not kept up very well with what days we're streaming and what days we're not on our Dungeons and Dragons show. I just know that there are some Sundays when we're not that are related to the holidays. So I want everybody to watch our Dungeons and Dragons show, but I don't want you to try to be watching it when it's not streaming. I mean, if you're interested in watching it with a live chat. If you're interested in just watching it, all of the episodes show up on YouTube or even as a podcast, and that is a very convenient way to keep up and catch up with, not catch up like in the tomato sauce thing, but to travel through time and see episodes from the past. You can do that on YouTube. Kind of nice to be able to do this without the head magnifiers, because it's not that they're uncomfortable, but they're not like wearing a pair glasses, which I'm not doing because my glasses don't let me see close up. I'm very nearsighted, which means I can see near. It also means I can't see far, which is why I have a large print edition of the chat screen over there that probably needs to be even larger in order to be effective. I think what I'm going to do is get all the little brush stuff done with all 6 of these, and then get all the large brush stuff done with all 6 of these rather than switching back and forth. Be peeling the other one off of the stand and putting another one on, and just continuing to paint around the feet until that's done, and then I'll use the larger brush to finish. And after that, assuming it goes okay, I'm going to do some experimentation with that flame to see if there's a more expedient way of getting it to look like a flame, to look flamey like this one does, without it taking as much time. That's the plan anyway. I keep saying I guess it's either or anyway. It's saying anyway way too often. So I'm trying to stop saying anyway. That was a failure because I said anyway. It was the knights who say ni, whose secret word changed to it, and they keep saying it. They're in the knights to get away. But that aside, after these guys are done, which is going to be sometime in the next hour, next 45 minutes, they'll be done. I'll work on that flame. And I'm assuming there'll be time left at the rate this is going. There should be. After I finish working on the flame, this is what I'll be doing on Friday. This is really exciting stuff. There's some rocks. I DM printed. It looks like 24 rocks, some of which are really small. Okay. And they're primed now. They're gray, but they need to be painted with another gray and then detailed and then washed. So I will be painting 3D printed rocks. It's pretty exciting, isn't it? On Friday. It's multi-layered, but there's so many of them that I'll just, by the time I finish one bit, it'll be dry and I'll be able to move the next in terms of just the colors. Because they need, even though they're primed gray, my bosses say that they want it painted gray anyway, and then wanted to have like speckles and little lines and things to make them look more realistic. So I'll be playing around with that, trying to make them look rocky. That's what I'll be doing on Friday. And then I'm not sure after that, on Monday, I might be able to get back to the Savoya then. And the thing I'll be working on is the instrument panel, which is incredibly detailed and tiny. And so I'll be using my Heg magnifier and the teeniest brushes I have, and probably be going, really I'll probably be doing a lot of that because it isn't going to go that well, probably, but I'm going to give it a try. The instrument panel on the box top, they always put a picture of a model on the box top and the side panels of one that's been like expertly prepared by, I don't know, people who are just insanely good at model building in terms of getting the paint exactly where they want it and not where they don't, and detail and shading and things that are, at least for me, impossible to replicate. So I sort of try, but then end up compromising with, it's pretty nice, instead of, wow, that's amazing. But yeah, the instrument panel that was on the side panel, actually, of the box is, it falls into that, wow, that's an amazing category, with how detailed they were able to make it look. So I'm going to try to make my instrument panel for the Savoia look, if not amazing, at least, hey, that's pretty nice. Like like I did with the submarine and the Apollo. Yeah, so yeah, that's pretty good. That's not bad. That kind of quality. Continue my theme of this is not a how-to show, but if you want to, you can kind of pretend it's a how-to make models look, it's pretty decent. If your skill level is like my skill level, okay, which is, no, I'm not amazing, and maybe you're not either, but you want people to say, your model looks pretty good. And on the cheap, because other than like paints and brushes, I haven't invested in too much modeling gear other than the head magnifiers and the paint shaker. And you can live without the paint shaker, but you really can't live without a head magnifier or something equivalent. Yeah, so that's the kind of thing that will be happening probably on Monday, before I'm gone for a bit, is getting back to the Savoia. The people who made the model understand that not everybody is able to make the instrument panel look amazing, like whoever did the one on the box top. I can't tell. Situation there. If you can't make it look amazing, like on the box top, or the box side panel, I should say, I should try to be accurate. If you can't make it look like that, they have a decal option. And I really don't want to revert to the decal option. It's okay, but it just looks like a decal. It doesn't look like an instrument panel. I'm not, I really don't like it that much, and I don't want to revert to that. So I'm going to work really hard on the instrument panel, but it'll be very, very tiny and very time consuming. And it'll be so small that you probably won't be able to see it very much on screen. And so you'll just have to take my word for it as I describe what I'm doing or failing to do in terms of getting that thing painted nicely. It's got, instruments on it. And the face of the instrument needs to be painted probably I have to decide whether to paint it bright white or kind of a slightly off-white. Sometimes, the bright white doesn't look right. It's just too white, too lifeless almost. Yeah, so I'll be doing that. And then the bezel, the ring around it is raised, so that won't be too hard to paint, I think. And I'll be painting that either maybe if I have a dark brass color or maybe bronze. I'm thinking probably brass. The original instrument panel would have had a brass ring or bezel around the instrument panel. So that part of it isn't impossible, even for me. It's, it involves painting the inside of the instrument dial white and then painting the raised bezel around it, making a nice clean circle with a nice raised edge. Okay. The really tricky part is that inside the white instrument panel face is detail printed of the markings on the instrument. And, it's one thing to have a white circle with a brass ring around it, which sort of looks kind of like it might be an instrument. It's another to have the markings on the dial show. And that will be a little bit of a big challenge. I had some success doing that sort of thing on the submarine. There are lots of instrument panels there, and I came up with a technique that worked using a nail head and felt tip pen. I'll just say that's what it involved, and it worked okay. Okay, I got that up on the boot. I'm going to have to do some. I have to do some green touch up on that boot. The sand is just too high up, and it's right on the front, right there where it's going to show pretty badly. So I'm going to have to come back to this one here and do some green touch up before I go terribly much further. Do that before I switch brushes, because otherwise I'm going to forget about it. So that's going to be the challenge. Is the thing there is that the ring on the submarine, the ring around the instrument face, was pretty much at the same height in terms of how much it was raised above the surface of the face of the instrument. The ring around it was pretty much the same height as the markings on the inside. And so I was pretty much what I was doing was stamping the color on. And that worked because a flat surface would stamp the color and not get it down below onto the instrument panel face or the area around the instrument. But on the Savoia, the markings on the inside, on the face of the instrument itself, the dial, are well below the raised rim around it, which means that I can't stamp them at the same time. And if I do try to stamp the detail on, I have to be able to get the stamper on the inside of the bezel somehow, and some of those are really small. So I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. Really not. It'll just be experimentation. But that's what I will be doing likely on Monday. The next steps of the construction of the Savoia are all dependent upon getting the instrument panel done. And like I said, I really do not want to revert to the one with the decal. I will do that. I'm going to make the decal one by putting the decal on it, but I don't want to use it. It's just gumming up and becoming unusable. It's too bad. I don't like wasting it. I'll be coming back to these with this brush, okay, which has more bristles on it, which will allow me to paint that much more quickly than this has been going. But there's the green I need to repair. Where did it go? I need to repair this where I got the sand way up on top of the boot. That was I didn't mean to do a fake Canadian accent there. Boot. No, boot. This by just getting a little bit of paint off the tip of the bottle here. There's a lot of it there as it kind of oozes up underneath the cap. And if I can get the brush on there correctly, getting a nice clean line, getting an uneven line. Well, in doing that, I see that I missed a spot with the brown. Okay, since I've got the green out, I'm just looking at the feet, and I'm finding spots that are not that well done. I'm going to check the others out too, see if I need to do green touch up on any of them. But I saw there's a spot underneath the heel there that really should be painted the sand color that isn't. It's starting to be one of those fix it, mess it up situations. So these are surprisingly not messed up. Bit messed up, but it's sort of tolerable. Okay. What I am seeing are some spots that need to be brown, the sand brown instead of green. I'm just going to go back and do those real quickly if I can get the green paint out of this. There aren't too many. There's like a little bit around the heel here. These, it was a problem, I think, underneath. Was it now? Yeah, one of these had a real issue somewhere, and now I'm not seeing where. It was one of these where the heel was raised up. This one? No. It was really very obvious. And now it's not. So if it's not obvious, it doesn't exist. Guess maybe I caught it. All right. So I am getting now to the point where I can use more bristles, moving more paint more quickly. And I still need to be careful because this is also one of those things where I get more paint on the bristles and then I go make a blot or a splotch or a glop. One of those things in the hierarchy of messiness. This should go quickly. I doubt if that's true, if that was a true statement or not about this should go quickly. Because it's, this isn't a thing that requires huge care. It just requires, not messing up. Which means I've got at least 1/8 of an inch of paint all around the feet. So I don't need to get any closer than that with this big brush. Big as in, it's such an ambiguous term in terms of brushes. Big as in having more bristles than the other one. Not big as in the handle is big or, I've talked about that before. I'm not going to go on and on. It just spreads more paint more quickly than the one with hardly any little bristles that had very few tiny bristles, as opposed to this. But this is also a place where I could get careless and just slather paint all over the model where it doesn't belong. This left. Yep. I just want to be able to finish this in time to do my experiment with the flame. Experiment as in trying a different technique to paint the tips of the flames so it looks flamey as opposed to just yellow and blobby. Okay, so that this looks more like that. It won't look exactly like that because I'm only going to be applying one color, not multiple colors. I'm going to try 2 colors of orange. No, I really think the red tips make a big difference. Now that I'm looking at it and thinking about it while I'm painting the bases here that I think I need to use a red and not an orange. That the tips of the flame should be red. I mean, orangish red would be good. I don't know if I've got that color. I'm going to look at my color chart again. I had pulled out the colors that I thought would work, but as I'm looking at reality here, as opposed to theory, which I was when I pulled those colors out, I am thinking that red is, I need to use red. And it needs to be kind of an orangey red. Third one, okay. And it's on camera, mostly. Now I'm going to do a bunch of recapping here. One thing I'm going to recap is the streaming time for this, which on the thing that comes on before and after on the screen, and social media, I think, also talk about it being from 10 until 2. That is no longer true. Right? Several weeks ago, I stopped that and am going from 10 until 1. The 10 until 2 featured what always turned out to be excessively long break between like noon and 12:30 or 12:10 and quarter to 1. It was supposed to be like a 20 to 30 minute break, and it always ended up being longer. And then I would come back after the break and just not be able to accomplish terribly much. And so one day, there were people active in chat, and I was doing some stuff, and I didn't get a break, and I just kept going, and it worked out fine. I was able to go until about 1 o'clock before I really started to fade, which happens to me during this stream after a couple of hours. Yeah, and it worked out. And so I thought, well, let me try that again and on purpose this time. And I did, and it worked out. And so it continues to work out, and I'm changing it now to from 10 until 1 with any break at all, just a real quick bio break like one I took earlier today. And I seem to be getting more done than I was when I was doing an extra hour. So that is going to continue. The days I'm streaming, I will be streaming from 10 until 1 with, if anything, just a real quick break without even putting the break screen on unless there's some necessity to do that. I just need some more of this paint squeezed out. This has gone gummy on me. Unusable. But I got 2 left. So that's one recap. The other recap is that I need to be away for a while. And so I will not be, I will be streaming Friday and Monday, but I will not be streaming next week, Wednesday, Friday, and the following Monday. So I'll be streaming this Friday and next week, Monday. And then we'll be not streaming until the 18th of December. And then somewhere in there are some holidays. And when I figure out which days of the week all of those things are, because, living in the moment here, not be streaming on some of those days that are holidays or around the holidays, but I'll let people know what those will be when it's closer to that time and I've looked at a calendar and paid attention to it. Okay, so those are the changes in streaming schedule. That, huh? There was something else. I wonder what it was. You're probably not wondering, because anyway, I said anyway. Yeah, that's another thing is I'm going to try to stop saying anyway quite so much. It was pretty successful today. I think it happened very often. More, I think I said that word more often. Say I'm trying not to say it. There, I said it. To say ni. Watch the movie, you'll understand. Yep. So that's another thing is I am making a real effort to not be saying that word that I don't want to say as much as I had been. So, yeah, I talked about the time of the stream, the days of the stream. I have talked about what I will be working on in the future. So on Friday, I'll be working on rocks. There are so many of them. I'm not going to bring them over here today because I've got all this stuff all over the place. But you'll see them on Friday. There's a lot of them, and they're small, and they need to be made to look like rocks. Right now, they look like gray blobs, which I think is pretty rocky, but not to the satisfaction of my overlords. Okay, I'm just going to put these on screen because they're my Tashir'anuns, and they are now done. They came out okay. They came out okay. You know, they're not perfect, but they're pretty decent. Yeah. And it's, maybe I'll move the camera a little bit here. You can look at them this way. Has that made you nauseous moving it around like that? Not. Okay, you can, that's as good as it gets. So you can look at them while I find the paint I want to use to test on the flame tips of the flame, where I'm trying to get it to look flamey using a quarter or less of the amount of time it takes to do it the way I had been doing it before. Try it with a little brush, see how it works. But first, I'm going to look at my red colors. I was thinking of orange, but it just, no, they need to be red. So I've got red. I've got scarlet red, and kind of a bright orangish red. I think Amaranth's red. Put these away and find Amaranth's red. Should be this one. And it is. Huh. Amazing. That hardly ever happens, that I am able to find what I'm looking for just like that. Even if I put them away the right places. Still unusual. Okay. Trying to make this look more like this, but using only one color to accent the tips of the flames. And this is the color I chose. And I will see how that ends up looking. These guys need to go in a place where they will be safe. And where I'm going to put them is not that place. I'm putting them up here. And it looks like it's far enough away, from everything. But at the end of the stream, I'm going to be reaching over them to push the end stream button. And there's a chance I could knock them over, but hopefully they'll just fall in the paper towel and things won't break. Yeah. I'm going to do how can I make this look flamey by just applying one color, not two. If I were an artist, I would know exactly what to do and how to do it, and it would look beautiful. But I'm not. I'm kind of good at painting within the lines. When I was a kid, I was like that. I colored within the lines. I was really good at that. Got up to the lines, never went over. Showed absolutely no creativity at all. Rule bound by the lines. And so when I'm painting minifigs, I'm pretty good at getting the paint, one color next to the other on the lines. That works out pretty well. I'm not that good at doing things like shading and weathering and those kind of artistic things. Just not. So part of it is not visualizing it that well, and part of it is just not having the manual skills needed to do it. Okay, I want the tips to be this color, so I'm going to paint from the tips down. Trying to make it streaky. Okay, but I want yeah, that's the right brush for this, at least, I think. Need a lot of it on here, but just enough. It might be okay. I'll be getting an expert opinion. People in charge of Dice and Dungeons. I'm not, about how this looks, but I think it's not taking that long to do this. They probably should have. You're going to say, how long did it take you to do that? And I'll say, I don't know, a couple of minutes. No, I won't know. I won't know how long it took me to do this. I'll tell them, tell you what, this has been recorded, right? You've got a recording of me doing this. Why don't you watch the recording? Oh, that's a clever retort. Yeah, if you want to know how long it took, watch the recording and time it. Because I was too busy painting this to pay attention to the time. That sounds kind of like that's what I'm doing. What I'm not paid to do here is to paint these things. So if you really want to know how long it took, then you have a way of doing that. And you can do it with great accuracy. Than if I had actually been paying attention. I think this is a pretty good color. I did something right. I think I chose wisely. It's a nice reddish orange. So it's not like really dark red, but it's not just kind of an inconsequential orange color either. Do I know where to put the orange and not? I don't. I'm just kind of flicking it on the raised spots, kind of bringing it down. Well, I got a little too much there. Some of these transitions, are looking okay, and some, yeah. But the idea here was to see how it would look by taking just a couple of minutes, as opposed to maybe some of those flames would take like 20 minutes to paint, because they were different layers and they needed to dry, and it was actually kind of an arduous process. This was really pretty quick. And as I said, if they want to know how long did it take, it was, well, watch the recording and time it. Maybe a little bit more here. And I can just, in some spots, just almost dry brush it on, just so there's a little bit of color where there wasn't before. The edges, it's a little more ragged. I want it ragged on the edges. This is one of those things where I don't want a clean break. I do not want a clean line. I want it to be um 'kay. I think this looks kind of flamey. The color is pretty decent. I'm going to take that after the stream here. I'll take that up and say, oh, what do you think about this? And they'll say, well, you should have a little more here and a little more there and a little less here. And I'll go, yeah, okay. I understand. And, I'm not a flame artist here. I'm just trying to, capture the sense of fire. And there it is. $10 yet? Yeah, the wall clock. I put a new battery in and had the wall clock fall back so it wasn't an hour ahead. And it's keeping time now, which is not something I've had for over a year, really, because it's really hard for me to read the clock on the computer. It's really tiny, but I can see the hands on the wall clock up there that you can't see. Okay, that's a Tashir'anun. I'm going to move this out of the way and take that up. I'll put the Tashir'anun back up here because that's the thing I got done today. You can see them being done. They will show up in our Dungeons and Dragons show sometime in the future. Probably not as friends. I can almost guarantee that they won't appear as friends. Thank you for the new follow. I really appreciate it. Please tell everybody you know, tell people you just meet as random strangers on the street. Not necessarily on the street. Sometimes it's in a building, wherever you happen to meet them. tell them that Dyson Dungeons is really amazing and that they should become Twitch followers and YouTube subscribers to not just this amateurish painting stream where I do minifigs and things and sometimes build models, but that they should become fans. Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, meet people on the street, you meet people in buildings. During the winter here, especially since there's going to be a blizzard coming, being in a building is better than being on the street. But tell everybody how wonderful Dyson Dungeons is and how they should, check out this stream, but more importantly, our Dungeons and Dragons show. And if they can't catch it with the live chat when it streams on Sundays at 2, all the episodes are on YouTube, and most of them, I'd say almost all of them, are really pretty entertaining. We are not just players, but we are performers in a sense, and put on, I think, a really good show. So check that out. Thank you for the follows. And as I said, we appreciate it. Just word of mouth. Just let people know that they should become followers and subscribers. And if you really want to be helpful, you can actually go to patreon.com/DysonDungeons, patreon.com/DyceAndDungeons. You can become a patron. And if you become a patron, you get our DM notes and our pre-recording improv warm-ups. And it will give me a little bit of money that maybe I can buy a new brush. That would be kind of fun to have a new brush rather than the one that's worn out. Let's see. Recap of the schedule. I am planning to stream on Friday. I'll just say that a little bit hesitantly because there really is a blizzard coming today, and it's supposed to be blizzarding all over tomorrow. Like with 35-mile-an-hour winds and snow, and they're already warning that, the band of brushes. I use several brands. I have been using Army Painter. I've got a couple of Army Painter ones that work really well, especially this little one. What is it called? Psycho or something. And then recently, I've been using ones from Tamiya, and I've been using one that's been working really well. And then I really like this brush. You can see it is really well used. This brush has been around for, like, good grief, 30 years maybe. I remember using this, well, and other people have used it too. You can see it's just gummed up, and I have no clue. Underneath there somewhere is a brand name. So whatever this was, I use this as well. Most of what I use, when I'm painting models or minifigs like this, everything is so tiny that I'm ending up using, like this one. This is an old brush too. This is like 30 years old. I don't know if Atlas even exists anymore. But 10-0, I use 10 zeros and 20 zeros probably more often than not. I started using this one when I was painting Warhammer figures, and that was like 25 years ago. So this brush has been around a long time. Like I said, I don't even know if they make it anymore, but I use it, and I'll be using it until I can't anymore. But those are the brands that I've been buying lately, are the Army Painter and the Tamiya. And probably, I don't know, when they wear out, I'll go on and buy some others. There are some really expensive ones, like God Hand and things. Occasionally, I've got a couple of those, and occasionally I'll use them. But I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I have more success with the less expensive ones that maybe have to replace more often. And maybe it's just the way I'm using them. And most of the model paints we use, when we were doing dungeon tiles, we bought a lot of these large bottles of Tamiya color because they're when you get you get more paint for the money when you get the bigger bottles like that. And when painting dungeon tiles, there's a lot of paint surfaces just going on. I probably could use commercial house paint for all I know and have the same effect. But we started using those, and those work really well. But for painting minis and things, the stuff dries out in the bottle before it gets used up. So different paints for different purposes. A lot of what we use is like what was available online during the COVID lockdowns. What could we order? And so could still get stuff from Japan, and these are Viejos. Use those. And I'm not advertising those. I'm just saying that's what we use. And a lot of what we use is because of the availability of it, and we got used to it, and they almost all work really quite well. Yeah. There are some paints that when I'm painting larger surfaces, I'll just show this to you. Okay, this is the Savoya. This is the inner fuselage. Okay, but this is washed with a brown wash to make it look like wood, but the bottom isn't. So I was able to do this with a brush, and there are actually 4 coats of paint on there. And I found that if I brush long strokes and carefully with these flat paints, that works. Sometimes, like the detail, like the silver detail on here, or the sword blades or something, there's not enough surface area to hardly get one coat on. But multiple thin coats gives, especially if you're using flatter paints or if you need a really good solid base coat, without streaks or anything like that, 2 or 3 coats of thin paint, of thinly applied paint, really works well. And I, can read about it. I've read about that. So do it this way. It's like until you actually do it, you can't really tell. I found that. I'm not saying that's going to be your experience, but for me, that's been my experience of, try this. And then I try it and it doesn't work and it's messy. And, I don't wait. The first time I did it, I didn't wait long enough between coats. And so the second coat started to dissolve the first coat and pull it up. That wasn't good. But then I learned how to do that. And once you get that down, 2 or 3 thin coats work really well for larger surfaces. I like this brush for that. This is wonderful little soft bristles and doesn't leave brush marks very much. Someday this is going to wear out or break or something, and I'm not sure how to replace it because I don't know what it is. It's yellow with a black tip. Friday, I'm going to be painting rocks, which I could bring over and show to you. Yeah, why not? I've got like 1 minute left here. So they printed out these rocks, and I primed them gray, and they said, well, that's gray. And rocks are gray, but they're not looking the way I want them to look. So I'm going to be putting gray paint on top of the gray paint, and then putting like little streaks and speckles on it, especially in some of the crags and things, and then washing them. And then they will be unsatisfied with how it looks, and they'll complain to me about the job I did on rocks. But this is what I'll be working on Friday. Oh, what I wanted to say, and then I just distracted myself or got distracted, is that, they're on 2-sided tape so that they don't move around. I'm just going to leave them on there as I'm painting them because there's no place to hold them otherwise. We have a blizzard coming tonight and all day tomorrow. And there is a small chance that the internet might go out. And if the internet goes out, then I can't stream this because there's no internet on which to stream it. So if you check in on Friday and this stream is not streaming, it is because the internet is gone, not working. So I just want to get that out there ahead of time, just in case that does happen. I'm thinking it probably won't, but we have had internet outages before because it just decided it was tired that day, I guess. I don't know. Don't want to be interneting today. And so it didn't. So I'm planning on Friday, and I'll be working on those rocks. And then if there isn't any stream on Friday, I'll do it on Monday. But I will be here Friday and Monday and then gone for 3 stream days next week, Wednesday and Friday, and then the Monday after that, and back on the 18th. Don't say that I'm not going to be around for 2 streams and back on the 18th. That's not true. I will be here Friday, internet willing, and Monday. And I'll just keep people updated about when I'm not streaming and when I am. So these guys are done. I hope that my bosses think that they're okay and that they're fit for the show. Yeah. I'll see you on Friday, making those look more rocky than they look now. And then on Monday, I will get, very likely, unless something else gets printed over the weekend, which is possible. On Monday, I'm going to get back to the Savoia S21 Porco Rosso's plane and begin working on the instrument panel. See how that goes. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being a follower. Encourage other people to do the same. If you watch this on YouTube, become a subscriber and encourage other folks to do the same. Watch our Dungeons and Dragons show. It is amazing. I will see you Friday. I'm planning on it with Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons. Bye.